Good day, everyone. Welcome to a Scazilla Graphic Studios video. This video, we're going to go over the DCS updater, how to set it up as a first-time user, and how some of the functions work, as well as preview some of the newer functions. The current version of the app, this version isn't public, so this is actually a new version. It has new things that doesn't have in the public version. The newest public version is pretty much up to date, with the exception of a lot of code fixes and a lot of expanded functionality in the system tray. So for the most part, this is basically set up with this is launched with no settings set. You'll notice there's no builds in the drop down menu, all the options are disabled. So the first thing we're going to do is go to settings. If you want to set a custom name, you can go ahead and set a custom name for each build. So for slot 1 build, you have the custom name, the folder path, the save games path, the status of those two folders. For slot 2, you have the same. For slot 3, you have the same. So we're going to go ahead and set the first folder path to the current DCS open beta. And then we're going to go ahead and set our saved games for that as well. And then second build we'll probably use in Legacy 2.2 build, just for an example of how it disables certain things. So Legacy 2.2. Alright, so once you have the folder set, you click on verify, and it'll have green status icons for the DCS World installs that are detected, as well as the save games. And any DCS World version that's detected, it'll also show the version that's on the left. And it'll populate a drop down list. You can select one. Some of the few buttons that we've added is basically you can reset the build name back to the default. You can clear the build paths or clear the save games paths, which automatically rescans, so it's easier than trying to highlight each individual text box and delete. So once you select a build that has the save games folder path, you'll be able to choose a different preset. These presets aren't actually made by me, they're generated from your default configuration. So basically preset 1 through 4, as well as the VR preset, will all be copies of your default. And then what you do is you choose one, you launch DCS, and then you set everything within the settings menu of the DCS using the DCS user interface. And then you exit DCS and it saves for that preset, and then you choose another and do repeat the same. This option basically allows the DCS software to generate the preset file, or generate the settings within the preset file. We were exploring having the app actually parse and read the JSON database from the actual configuration settings file itself, but there was a little bit of gray area in generating the configuration file, especially when users have or don't have certain modules. So the best option was to just let DCS generate it. The app will generate the 4 individual preset files, as well as the VR preset files, based off of copies of your preset file that you currently have. And then from there you can edit the settings, the resolution, the anti-aliasing, the individual settings that you want for high-low graphics, etc. This method is just a lot more stable, and it's easier to explain to people. You just choose a preset, launch DCS, set your settings, and then exit DCS, and it saves. You don't have to launch a secondary app screen and adjust a bunch of settings, then click the save button, then close it, and then verify it. DCS does everything for you, basically once you set it. So default and default VR headset are actually the same. The only difference is if you click launch VR on while default selected, it'll just choose that one. It's basically a placebo profile. There ain't no file for it. Preset 1 through 4 have individual files, as well as VR headset. Default is basically the original options LUA that you have set. If you set, for example, if you set a preset and then go back and choose a build that don't have presets, it automatically changes back to default and turns it off, so you can't use it. For the settings screen, the next option you have is the ability to change preset names. So for example, if you have a 4K screen and you have a separate options preset for 4K, you can change it to 2160p so you know which one it is, or you can reset it back. The language and license type is basically they're all defaulted to English for now, just on the first launch. If you have a Russian license for A10, you just change it and it automatically saves. Same for the K50 license. There's 4 different license types. Whatever you select, it automatically change and save. Same for training, which actually isn't used anymore for DCS 2.5 and above. The video training modules don't register anymore. The manage config folders allows you to copy your config folder, the input settings, your controller settings, the graphics settings, etc. from one build to another. That way, if you're managing all 6 builds and you have 6 save game folder slots with presets, you really only have to set the presets for slot 1, and then you can copy from one slot to another, or from one slot to the DCS update utility, and then from that to another slot. You can also make copies, backup, and deletes. Latest version numbers show you the version numbers that are on the DCS servers. The Oculus Rift and mirror configuration. The rendering driver basically controls which interface you want to use if you have an Oculus Rift. The default is Oculus Rift API. So when you launch DCS with Oculus Rift, it'll launch Oculus Home or the Oculus software and use the Oculus Rift's interface to render to the screen, as well as register your movements and your input. If you're a fan of using the Oculus Rift with Steam VR instead of the Oculus Rift API, you can choose the Steam VR API, and it'll launch DCS on your Oculus Rift with the Steam VR interface instead of the Oculus interface. But the default is Oculus Rift API. The rendering type and the rendering size, basically you'll have side by side with distortion, left eye or right eye only. And you can choose the window size that you would like the window to be, 720p, 1080p, 480p, 1440p, 4K, etc. The app now automatically scans the Oculus folder, the default Oculus folder in the programs folder. If it finds it, it'll automatically enter it and verify it on launch. You don't have to do it. If you've installed it elsewhere, the actual, like, for example, most people have it in C programs folder, but some people have installed it on like another drive, D programs folder or D Oculus, then you have to set the program folder. Otherwise, if it's in the default location, it'll detect and verify it automatically. The new settings for the application settings, basically there's only 4 main options right now. There'll probably be more before the next public release. The first option is basically, do you want the app to start up normal, which is on the screen, or minimize, which should be in the system tray alone. This option was added so people can basically put the updater app on their Windows startup list and it'll just start up and run in the system tray automatically. The next is, do you want the application to minimize and restore on DCS launch, or you just want it to stay on the screen? Originally, the app would minimize when you launched the model viewer or DCS, and then when the process closed, it would come back up on the screen. However, some people like it to either stay minimized or stay on the screen. So normal application behavior, it'll stay in whatever state it is. So if you click launch, it'll stay either on the screen or stay minimized. Whereas if you click minimize and restore on launch, it'll minimize when you launch and then restore when the process closes. The default for that is normal, as well as the default for the startup type is normal, so it'll start up on the screen. The next option is the normal application behavior or launch external apps with DCS. Their external apps right now, I only scan for Oculus, Track IR, and TeamSpeak. I'll add Steam VR in the next few days probably, but the only ones you'll actually be able to choose to launch with DCS via the checkbox is TeamSpeak and Track IR. Unfortunately, I know there's at least a dozen unofficial freeware head tracking solutions: Face Track No IR, Free Track, Open Track, ED Track, Delon Track. There's at least a dozen of them, and unfortunately, Eagle Dynamics does not actually support any of those. So there's really the point where I can't support them if Eagle Dynamics doesn't support them. It's basically me trying. If I supported them, it would be me trying to push support onto the software that doesn't actually support it. Not to mention there are literally hundreds of variables for install locations and other options that I can't get into. So for the most part, those are not supported. If you want to launch those before DCS, you're going to have to do it manually. You won't have the option to actually have the app to scan for those. The next item is enable and disable system tray icons notifications. This was added because specifically now that it runs in the system tray and it can stay running in the system tray, a lot of notifications for the system tray icon have been added. So when you do things like update, download, launch, close, switch profiles, a little balloon will pop up on the bottom near the system tray icon. Unfortunately, OBS doesn't record those. So For Windows 7, Windows 8 might not be a problem, but for Windows 10 and the way they have notifications set up on Windows 10, this could actually be quite intrusive, especially because it's not just like a balloon that pops up and fades away. It's an actual like notification message, and you have to click a panel and click read or mark it as read. I don't exactly remember. I don't run Windows 10. So to disable those, basically you just choose disable tray notifications, and they will no longer be sent to Windows to present. So we can start application minimized and start application normally. We went over that, as well as the normal application behavior is enabled. So you can install individual modules by clicking on the actual button or checking them and clicking installed modules. You can launch the Oculus Mirror model viewer. Updater settings is new. They just integrated that this weekend. DCS did. Eagle Dynamics did, sorry. It brings up the GUI for the DCS updater, allows you to choose a new download folder where the updater will download new updates as well as unpack them before moving them to your actual DCS install. So for users that have like 100 or 200 gig solid state drive that's pretty much only got like 30 gig full, whenever there's a large update, it'll download 7 to 8, 15 gigabytes, and then it'll unpack those files into another 30 gigabytes. You'll quickly run out of space, and the update will fail to update. So if you can choose another folder on another drive, it'll download to that hard drive, as well as save your writes on your solid state drive. For every update, you don't need to have a write on your hard drive, and then expand them into that folder as well, and then copy them over. So it's good to have a secondary or a new download folder for if you don't have enough space on your solid state drive or even on your regular drive. The torrent settings, basically you can set it no torrents to just download HTTP servers only, or no seeding, which will disable uploading, and then set the max in upload and download speeds. So that covers the new part of the DCS updater settings. The show hide or the video training icons, those are no longer supported with DCS 2.5 at all. If the app detects that you're managing a DCS 2.5 version, it'll automatically disable the checkbox and the buttons. You can't uninstall or manage any of them because they're not even in the updaters list anymore. Whereas if you go back to, say, a 2.2 build, which still has them integrated, you'll still be able to do stuff. Alright, so that basically covers how to set up and run the updater. The one feature that was integrated in the last public build in a minimalized way, because it was still early and still basically the code wasn't fully migrated from our test project to the main project that we used to compile. So basically the system tray icon has significantly more of a menu now. So for example, we can just go to settings and let's say we want to start minimized and then relaunch the app. So starting at minimized is basically you'll be able to do everything from except for install individual modules at this point from the system tray icon. So when you install minimized, you can set it to start up with Windows. You'll just see the little Scalzo Graphics Studio icon in the bottom corner. From there, you can do everything. You can select builds, select preset, launch DCS, the model viewer, the Oculus Mirror, update, repair, clean, updater settings. You can force close the processes just in case they lock up and you need them to close. You can enable disable system trays. You can restore the application window, which will bring it up out of the system tray, check for the updates, restart the application, which will close and relaunch it, as well as quit. The builds and the presets are actually synced with the app's main window, so if you choose one in the system tray, it'll update on the app's main window. Then if you disable tray notifications, it'll stop the balloon pop-ups from coming up here. The settings are actually also basically synchronized. So for example, if I enable it, it changes up here. This basically will allow users to, as I said, launch it with Windows and manage the DCS install just from the system tray. In the future, we'll add the modules basically by category to the context menu for the system tray. At this point, though, they're not added yet, so you still have to use the actual main app window to install individual modules at this point. But once we get those added, you'll be able to basically go to each category, select which modules you want, check them off, and then just click choose install or install all modules or uninstall all modules, and either uninstall or uninstall them based on what you're checking. So basically that's how the app would run now.